Some cars were never meant to be remembered. Whether they were too powerful, too experimental, or just too risky for the industry, these 12 American machines were buried, scrapped, or locked away from the public eye. Were they a threat to the competition, victims of government regulations, or simply too ahead of their time? Get ready to uncover the forgotten secrets of American automotive history. The 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 is already an automotive legend, a factory-built street terror with an all-aluminum 427 big block engine that turned a lightweight pony car into a barely street-legal drag racer. It was an anomaly, a car that should never have existed under GM's strict corporate policies. Yet somehow, 69 of them were built and sold to the public. But what if there was something even more extreme? Deep in the archives of muscle car folklore lies the whispered legend of the 1969 Camaro ZL2, a prototype so powerful, so uncontrollable, that GM allegedly wiped all traces of it from history before it could reach the public. While the ZL1 was already stretching the limits of what a production car could be, the rumored ZL2 was said to be Chevrolet's secret nuclear option, an all-aluminum, high-compression monster that could have crushed anything on the street or strip. The supposed origins of the ZL2 trace back to the Can-Am racing program, where Chevrolet engineers were developing some of the most powerful big-block engines of the era. The ZL1's aluminum 427 was derived from these efforts, and it was already pushing well over 500 horsepower in stock form. But behind closed doors, GM engineers were experimenting with even wilder variations. Larger displacement versions of the engine, more aggressive camshaft profiles, high-rise intake manifolds, and even experimental tunnel ram setups that could have pushed output beyond 600 horsepower. Some insiders claim that Chevrolet built a small number of ZL2 prototypes for testing, outfitted with an even more radical version of the all-aluminum big block, possibly stroked to 454 cubic inches, or featuring a completely revised intake system designed for maximum airflow at high RPM. These test cars were allegedly run at GM's Milford Proving Grounds in certain drag strips under the cover of darkness, with a select group of engineers and test drivers tasked with seeing just how far the Camaro's platform could be pushed. Unlike the ZL1, which was built with NHRA superstock drag racing in mind, the ZL2 was supposedly engineered for all-out dominance. Quarter-mile times in the low 10s were rumored, and some sources claim that with proper tuning, the engine could have approached 700 horsepower, figures that wouldn't be matched in factory muscle cars for decades. The combination of a lightweight Camaro body and an all-aluminum big block with race-ready internals would have created a car that was simply too much for the streets of 1969. But if the ZL2 was so incredible, why didn't it make it past the prototype stage? The answer likely comes down to a combination of factors: corporate politics, insurance restrictions, and the rapidly changing landscape of the muscle car market. By 1969, insurance companies were cracking down on high-horsepower muscle cars, with skyrocketing premiums making big block machines nearly impossible to insure for the average buyer. On top of that, emissions regulations were tightening, and GM's corporate leadership was becoming increasingly wary of factory-backed street racers that could attract legal and political scrutiny. The final nail in the coffin may have been GM's own internal performance ban. At the time, GM had an unwritten policy that limited engine displacement in production cars to 400 cubic inches, an attempt to distance itself from factory-supported street racing. The ZL1 program had already skirted this rule by slipping through the back door via Chevrolet's Central Office Production Order (COPO) system, but an even more powerful version of the car would have been impossible to justify under corporate guidelines. So what happened to the ZL2? Unlike the ZL1, which was officially documented and sold to customers, there are no VIN records, no paperwork, and no publicly acknowledged test results for the ZL2. If it ever existed, Chevrolet made sure to erase all evidence of it. Some believe that a handful of prototypes were built and later destroyed to prevent them from ever making it into private hands. Others claim that at least one or two escaped destruction and may still be hidden away in private collections, owned by individuals who understand the significance of what they possess. Occasionally, rumors surface of a Camaro with an engine unlike any other. An all-aluminum big block that doesn't match any known production specs, with power figures that seem impossibly high for the era. Could these be remnants of the lost ZL2 program? Or is the ZL2 nothing more than a myth? A ghost story told by those who wish Chevy had pushed the Camaro even further in 1969. Until definitive proof surfaces, the ZL2 remains one of the most tantalizing mysteries in muscle car history, a glimpse into an alternate reality where Chevrolet built the most powerful Camaro of all time, only to erase it from existence before the world ever got to see it. The 1958 Packard Predictor was meant to be the car that would save Packard, a sleek, technologically advanced luxury coupe designed to prove that the company could still compete with Cadillac, Lincoln, and even European luxury brands. It was a car that embodied everything Packard once stood for: engineering excellence, elegance, and innovation. But despite its dazzling features and stunning design, it arrived too late to save the struggling brand. And in the end, the Predictor became a mere footnote in automotive history, a symbol of what could have been but never was. Packard had once been among America's premier luxury car makers, a brand associated with wealth, sophistication, and uncompromising quality. In the 1920s and 1930s, a Packard was a sign of success, a rival to Duesenberg, Pierce Arrow, and Cadillac. But after World War II, the automotive industry changed dramatically. The rise of mass production, shifting consumer tastes, and fierce competition from General Motors and Ford left Packard struggling to keep up. By the early 1950s, despite producing stylish and well-engineered cars, the company was losing market share to Cadillac, which had mastered the art of mass-producing high-end cars at lower prices. By 1954, desperate to remain competitive, Packard merged with Studebaker, another independent automaker that was facing financial difficulties. The idea was that by pooling resources, the two companies could stay afloat and take on the big three. But the merger turned out to be a disaster. Studebaker's production costs were too high, and instead of saving Packard, the struggling Studebaker drained its resources even further. The once proud Packard name was now in serious jeopardy. It was against this backdrop that Packard's designers set out to create a car that would remind the world of what Packard was capable of, a car that would reestablish the brand as the pinnacle of American luxury and innovation. That car was the Predictor. Designed by Richard Teague, the Predictor was a masterpiece of futuristic styling and forward-thinking engineering. It wasn't just another chrome-laden land yacht. It was a vision of the future, a car that could have redefined luxury motoring in the late 1950s and beyond. The Predictor was built by the legendary Italian coach builder Ghia, known for its work with Chrysler on concept cars like the Dart and the Norseman. The sleek, aerodynamic coupe featured long, flowing lines, a massive wraparound windshield, and a distinctive reverse slant rear window that would later influence production cars like the Mercury Turnpike Cruiser and the Ford Anglia. The Predictor's styling was unlike anything else on the road. Its aggressive stance and futuristic details made it look like something out of a sci-fi movie. But it wasn't just about looks. The Predictor was packed with cutting-edge technology. It featured a push-button transmission, electric windows and seats, hidden headlights, and even a retractable roof panel, a feature decades ahead of its time. Inside, the Predictor's cabin was a vision of futuristic luxury with aircraft-inspired controls, a full array of gauges and toggle switches, and plush, leather-trimmed seats that hinted at a new era of high-end motoring. Under the hood, the Predictor was powered by a 352 cubic inch V8 producing 275 horsepower, an impressive figure for the time. While not a muscle car in the traditional sense, it had the kind of performance that would have made it a serious competitor to Cadillac and Lincoln. Packard unveiled the Predictor to great fanfare at the 1956 Chicago Auto Show, and it was an instant sensation. The automotive press praised its bold design and advanced features, and for a moment it seemed like Packard might have a real shot at making a comeback. The Predictor was more than just a concept, it was a glimpse at what Packard's next generation of luxury cars could have been. Had it gone into production, it might have been the car that saved the company. But fate had other plans. By the time the Predictor was introduced, Packard was already in deep financial trouble. The merger with Studebaker had turned out to be a costly mistake, and the company was hemorrhaging money. Despite the excitement surrounding the Predictor, Packard simply didn't have the resources to put it into production. Worse still, Studebaker-Packard had lost control of its own fate. The company was now at the mercy of its creditors, and decisions about future models were no longer in Packard's hands. By 1957, the Packard name had all but disappeared. The last real Packards were built in 1956 at the company's historic Detroit plant, but after that, production shifted to Studebaker's factory in South Bend, Indiana. The 1957 and 1958 Packards were little more than rebadged Studebakers, and longtime Packard loyalists rejected them completely. Sales plummeted, and by 1959, the Packard name was gone for good. The 1970 Ford Torino King Cobra was supposed to be Ford's ultimate NASCAR weapon, a radical aerodynamic machine designed to crush the winged Mopars that had been dominating stock car racing. It was low, sleek, and brutally powerful, with a 429 Super Cobra jet engine under the hood. But just as Ford was preparing to unleash it on the track, NASCAR changed the rules, killing the Aero Wars and leaving the King Cobra to vanish into obscurity. By 1969, Ford was growing desperate in its NASCAR battle against Chrysler. The Dodge Charger, Daytona, and Plymouth Superbird were rewriting the rules of stock car racing, using wind tunnel-developed aerodynamics to achieve speeds never seen before. Richard Petty and Bobby Isaac were setting records with the Mopar Winged Warriors, and Ford's standard Torino Talladega, while fast, simply couldn't match their top speed on the big superspeedways like Daytona and Talladega. Ford needed a response, and fast. Enter the Torino King Cobra. Ford engineers set to work designing a car that could compete with the slippery, wind-cheating Mopars. They started with the already potent Torino but gave it a radical new aerodynamic nose cone, designed in a wind tunnel to slice through the air with minimal drag. Unlike the pointed nose of the Daytona, the King Cobra's front end was rounded, looking almost like the snout of a GT40 endurance racer. It had hidden headlights and a massive front air dam to keep the nose planted at high speeds. The car sat low, hugging the pavement, and featured flared fenders to accommodate wide racing tires. Under the hood, the King Cobra packed a monster, a 429 cubic inch Super Cobra Jet V8, one of the most powerful big block engines Ford ever produced. With a Holley 4-barrel carburetor, high-flow heads, and a solid lifter camshaft, it was easily capable of over 400 horsepower in race trim. Some reports suggest that prototype engines were making closer to 500 horsepower, making it a serious threat to Chrysler's Hemi-powered race cars. Ford built at least 3 prototypes of the King Cobra, testing them on the track and refining the aerodynamics. Legendary driver Mario Andretti reportedly tested one at the Ford Proving Grounds, and the early reports were promising. The King Cobra was fast, stable, and ready for battle. But then, disaster struck. NASCAR, seeing how wild the Aero War had become, decided to put an end to it. For the 1971 season, the sanctioning body introduced new rules that effectively banned extreme aerodynamic modifications. The rule change specifically targeted the wing cars, limiting their engine sizes to 305 cubic inches unless they were based on a mass-produced model with at least 500 street versions built. This killed off the Charger, Daytona, and Superbird, and with them, Ford's hopes for the King Cobra. Without a place to race, Ford pulled the plug on the project almost overnight. Most of the prototypes were scrapped, and the few that had survived were quietly sold off or tucked away. Unlike the Daytona and Superbird, which made it to showrooms in limited numbers, the King Cobra never had an official street version, making it one of the rarest and most mysterious muscle cars of its time. Over the years, rumors swirled about how many King Cobras actually survived. Some say only 2 or 3 exist today, while others claim a few additional prototypes were built before the program was canceled. At least one is confirmed to exist in private hands, a fully intact example with its original 429 Super Cobra jet engine still under the hood. Another, painted yellow, resurfaced in recent years, proving that not all of them were lost to history. Had NASCAR not changed the rules, the King Cobra could have been one of the most dominant stock cars of its era. It had all the right ingredients: aerodynamic efficiency, brute force horsepower, and Ford's full factory backing. It could have gone toe-to-toe with the Hemi-powered Mopars and cemented Ford's place at the top of NASCAR's most extreme era. But instead, the King Cobra became a ghost, a what-if story of muscle car history. It was a car built for war, but the war ended before it could even take the battlefield. The 1984 Pontiac Grand Prix 2+2 Era Coupe is one of the most enigmatic and mysterious NASCAR homologation specials ever conceived. Built in secret by Pontiac engineers as an early attempt to improve the aerodynamics of GM's struggling G-body race cars, it was a radical departure from the standard Grand Prix's boxy, upright design. Unlike its more well-known 1986 successor, this earlier version was never officially sold to the public, and Pontiac never publicly acknowledged its existence, leaving behind only whispers, scattered photos, and rumors among die-hard Pontiac enthusiasts and former factory insiders. By the early 1980s, NASCAR had evolved into an aerodynamic arms race. The days of running purely stock-looking cars were long over, and manufacturers were using every loophole they could find to gain an edge on high-speed superspeedways like Daytona and Talladega. At the time, General Motors was struggling in the aero department. The G-body platform, which underpinned the Chevrolet Monte Carlo, Oldsmobile Cutlass, Buick Regal, and Pontiac Grand Prix, had an outdated and aerodynamically inefficient shape, especially when compared to the sleek, sloped-back Ford Thunderbird. The upright rear window and squared-off roofline of GM's cars created massive wind resistance at high speeds, robbing them of crucial top-end performance on long straightaways. Chevrolet was the first GM division to take action, developing the Monte Carlo SS Aero Coupe, a version of the Monte Carlo with a specially designed fastback rear window and an extended fiberglass deck lid. It was a game-changer, helping drivers like Dale Earnhardt stay competitive against the dominant Fords. But what many don't realize is that Pontiac was working on a similar idea 2 years earlier, in 1984. The 1984 Pontiac Grand Prix 2+2 Aero Coupe was a factory experiment meant to improve the Grand Prix's high-speed aerodynamics for NASCAR competition. Unlike the standard Grand Prix, which had a traditional notchback design, the 2+2 featured a dramatically sloped rear window that curved into a longer, reshaped trunk lid. The new design helped airflow more smoothly over the car, reducing drag and improving stability at 200 mph. In theory, this was exactly what Pontiac needed to make the Grand Prix competitive against Ford's Thunderbirds. But something happened that kept it from ever reaching the track. According to insiders, Pontiac built a small number of these early Aero Coupes. Some say as few as 5, while others claim up to 25 were made. These weren't just prototypes, they were full functioning cars that were reportedly ready for NASCAR homologation. At the time, NASCAR rules required manufacturers to build at least 200 street versions of a car for it to be eligible for competition, and Pontiac seemed to be preparing to meet that requirement. However, for reasons that remain unclear, the project was suddenly halted. One possible explanation is that Pontiac had jumped the gun. NASCAR had not yet officially approved the sloped-back design, and GM may have decided that it was too risky to push forward without confirmation that it would be allowed in competition. Another theory suggests that Pontiac's upper management had cold feet about releasing the car before Chevrolet had its Monte Carlo SS Aero Coupe ready. GM was known for internal brand rivalries, and the company often preferred to let Chevrolet take the lead in motorsports development. Whatever the reason, the 1984 Grand Prix 2+2 never made it to official production. The few that had been built were quietly hidden away, and Pontiac essentially erased the project from existence. No official records of the car were ever released, and Pontiac never acknowledged its existence in any brochures, internal documents, or NASCAR announcements. It was as if it had never happened. Yet despite GM's attempts to bury the project, rumors persisted. A handful of these early 2+2 Aero Coupes were allegedly spotted at GM facilities and test tracks throughout the 1980s. Some even claim that a few escaped into private ownership, though no fully verified examples have surfaced. Unlike the later 1986 Grand Prix 2+2, which had at least 1,225 units built and sold to meet NASCAR's homologation requirements, The 1984 version remained a ghost car, one of those rare factory experiments that never made it to the light of day. If one of these 1984 Grand Prix 2+2s were to be discovered today, it would be one of the most significant finds in Pontiac history. It represents a lost chapter in the brand's racing heritage, a moment when Pontiac engineers were willing to push boundaries to keep their cars competitive. The fact that it was abandoned before it could ever prove itself on the track makes it an even more tantalizing mystery. Did any of these cars survive? Were they all destroyed, hidden away in private collections, or simply lost to time? The 1955 Chevrolet Biscayne was an automotive anomaly, an imaginative concept car that could have set the stage for a new kind of American luxury and sports sedan had it not been shrouded in mystery and obscurity. Its design was audacious and futuristic, an emblem of Chevrolet's vision for a vehicle that could combine the spirit of American muscle with refined elegance. In many ways, the Biscayne was ahead of its time, a perfect reflection of 1950s optimism, pushing the boundaries of what was considered possible for a mass-market car. When the Biscayne made its debut, it drew attention with its sleek, sporty lines and unique features. The car's exterior was a far cry from the typical conservative designs of the mid-1950s. It had a wide, low profile that made it seem both aggressive and luxurious, with sculpted fenders that hinted at muscle car performance. The standout feature, however, was its rear suicide doors, an element that made it not only more visually striking, but also more practical in terms of rear seat access. Paired with the car's wraparound windshield, which provided an unobstructed panoramic view, the Biscayne radiated an advanced vision of the future, akin to something you might expect in a science fiction film. The powertrain was just as ambitious as the car's design. It was rumored to feature a V8 engine, consistent with the kind of performance expected from a Chevrolet vehicle in that era. However, it wasn't just about power. The Biscayne was designed with comfort and technology in mind. The car was equipped with push-button transmission, power windows, and a retractable roof that offered an open-air experience, making it an early glimpse into the kind of luxury and convenience that would become commonplace in later decades. In a sense, the Biscayne could be seen as an experimental prototype for what would eventually evolve into the luxury sports sedans of today, with the kind of design flair that only concept cars can boast. Despite all of its groundbreaking features, the Biscayne never made it past its concept phase. It was shown at auto shows and generated considerable buzz, with many seeing it as a potential production car that would redefine the Chevrolet brand. But Chevrolet, like so many other manufacturers of the time, found itself in a tumultuous period where shifting priorities and the realities of the automotive market clashed with innovation. By the time the concept made its rounds, the car industry was still heavily focused on the traditional body styles and preferences of American consumers. And the Biscayne's bold, forward-thinking design might have been seen as too risky to mass produce. Rather than being placed into production, the Biscayne was quietly shelved, and its fate became somewhat of a mystery. Rumors started circulating that the car had been destroyed, a common fate for concept cars that didn't make it into production. Many assumed that GM had ordered the destruction of the prototype, as was often the case with cars that were no longer considered relevant. For years, the Biscayne vanished from public consciousness, leaving behind only photographs and whispered stories about its existence. Then, in a stunning turn of events, the car was rediscovered in the 1970s. The remains of the 1955 Chevrolet Biscayne were found in a junkyard in Detroit, rusted and decaying, buried under the weight of time. It was clear that the car hadn't been destroyed. It had simply been forgotten and abandoned, left to deteriorate in obscurity, while its fate remained unknown to the automotive world. The discovery of the Biscayne, though in a sad state of disrepair, reignited interest in the car, with many enthusiasts and historians eager to learn more about its history. The car's restoration became a quest for preservationists who worked tirelessly to return it to its former glory. The Biscayne had never been fully appreciated in its time, but its rediscovery allowed a new generation to marvel at its ingenuity and ambitious design. Its streamlined body, futuristic features, and unique configuration stood as a testament to Chevrolet's vision of the future, one that in hindsight might have been too far ahead of its time for the 1950s market. For all its beauty and technological promise, the 1955 Chevrolet Biscayne became a symbol of what could have been, a ghost from an era of automotive experimentation that was ultimately buried under the weight of economic pressures and industry conservatism. The car's legacy lies not in the vehicles it inspired, but in the dream of what American cars might have been had it not been so quickly abandoned. The rediscovery of the Biscayne in the 1970s wasn't just a win for automotive enthusiasts, it was a win for anyone who believes in the power of innovation and the beauty of concept cars. The fact that this extraordinary vehicle was left to decay in a junkyard for decades is a reminder of how fleeting and fragile ideas can be in the fast-moving world. The 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda convertible stands as one of the most coveted and mysterious muscle cars in history. Officially, only 12 examples of this rare beast were ever built, each one equipped with the legendary 426 Hemi V8 engine. These cars are considered the pinnacle of American muscle from the golden era of high-performance vehicles, combining the raw power of the Hemi with the iconic, sleek lines of the Cuda convertible body. But beneath the official story lies a lingering mystery. Whispers and rumors suggest that there may have been more than the official Tupotium cars produced. If true, these hidden Cudas would be some of the rarest and most valuable muscle cars in existence, but their whereabouts remain an enigma. The 91 Plymouth Hemi Cuda convertible was the epitome of the muscle car era, a time when Detroit's automakers were in a fierce race to produce the most powerful, most eye-catching vehicles on the road. With the Hemi engine delivering an astounding 427 horsepower, the Cuda was not just fast. It was a brutal, street-shaking machine capable of dominating any street or strip. Coupled with a convertible body, it offered the thrill of open-air driving, combined with the terrifying power of the most ferocious V8 engine ever produced. At the time, it was the sort of car that left onlookers breathless, and it was a status symbol for those who could afford it. However, by 1971, the muscle car era was nearing its end. Stricter emissions regulations and rising insurance costs were starting to stifle the performance capabilities of these cars. The Hemi engine, once the crown jewel of the muscle car world, was being phased out in favor of smaller, less potent engines to meet the new standards. This made the Hemi Cuda all the more special. It was a last hurrah for the big block engines that had defined the era. The 12 officially documented Hemi Cuda convertibles were already rare, with only a select few buyers getting the chance to own one. These cars are now revered as priceless treasures, and their value has only increased as time has passed. However, rumors persist that more Hemi Cuda convertibles may have been built in secret, perhaps for high-ranking Chrysler executives or as special order cars for racers and collectors who could afford to bypass the normal production lines. Some suggest that Chrysler, in the final days of muscle car production, might have produced a few extra units off the books to satisfy the demands of these influential figures. These alleged extra cars were said to be built in the same configuration as the official models, with the same Hemi engine and convertible body style. But despite the numerous reports and whispers from Mopar insiders, no evidence has ever surfaced to confirm these theories. None of the rumored extra cars have been found or verified, leaving the possibility of their existence shrouded in mystery. The idea of hidden Hemi Cuda convertibles adds an extra layer of intrigue to an already legendary muscle car. These cars would likely be worth a small fortune today if they exist. A genuine 1971 Hemi Cuda convertible in top condition can command astronomical prices at auction, often fetching over $1 million. The idea that there could be additional secret examples of this rare car is tantalizing for collectors, as finding one of these missing vehicles would make anyone a legend in the world of muscle car ownership. But for now, the mystery remains unsolved. Despite countless attempts to uncover any remaining Hemi Cuda convertibles beyond the official 12, no solid evidence has surfaced. Perhaps the cars were destroyed, lost to time, or quietly hidden away, but the whispers continue. Some believe that Chrysler, fearing the impact these extra cars might have had on the market, deliberately kept them out of the public eye. Others think that the missing convertibles could have been locked away in private collections, tucked away in garages or barns, their owners unwilling to reveal their secrets. The legacy of the 1971 Hemi Cuda convertible is undeniable, and it stands as one of the ultimate muscle cars ever produced. Whether or not there are more hidden examples of this legendary machine remains one of the greatest mysteries in the world of classic cars. But for enthusiasts and collectors, the allure of the missing Hemi Cuda remains an enduring mystery, one that adds to the mystique and power of this already awe-inspiring vehicle. The 1963 Chevrolet Corvette Grand Sport is a car wrapped in mystery, legend, and secrecy. It was a vehicle born out of the intense rivalry between American automakers and European powerhouses like Ferrari, and its brief existence is a testament to the ambition and vision that Chevrolet had for racing dominance at Le Mans. However, it's also a story about ambition quashed by corporate intervention and a history that was deliberately erased, only to be rediscovered decades later, cementing its status as one of the most coveted and enigmatic race cars in history. Chevrolet's decision to develop the Corvette Grand Sport was rooted in a desire to take on Ferrari at Le Mans and show the world that American engineering could compete with the finest European machines. The Grand Sport was designed to be the ultimate race car, a lightweight, track-focused version of the Corvette that was built to compete in endurance racing. It featured a specialized chassis made from magnesium, making it incredibly light for its size, and it was powered by a race-tuned 357 cubic inch V8 engine capable of producing around 550 horsepower, far more than any production Corvette of the time. This engine was a far cry from the street-focused V8s of the era, intended to deliver blistering performance on the track. The Grand Sport was engineered for one purpose: to win at the highest levels of motorsport. To compete with the Ferrari 250 GTO and other exotic competitors, the Corvette needed more than just power. It needed an advanced aerodynamic design, improved suspension systems, and a near-perfect balance of weight and handling. The car was a marvel of its time, featuring a chassis and bodywork designed to optimize speed and stability. It was the embodiment of American engineering prowess, built to defy the European dominance of the time. However, despite the engineering genius behind the Grand Sport, Chevrolet's ambitions were quickly crushed. In a sudden and surprising move, GM pulled out of factory-supported racing in 1963, effectively putting an end to the Grand Sport project. The company's executives decided to focus on production cars and avoid the high costs and risks associated with professional racing. This decision was likely influenced by the growing concern over GM's public image and the potential fallout from having a factory-backed racing program. As a result, the Corvette Grand Sport was erased from history. GM issued orders to destroy all but two of the cars, hoping to ensure that the public would never see this racing masterpiece. The program was shut down so abruptly that the cars, which had been developed with great effort and investment, were nearly destroyed before they had a chance to prove their worth on the racetrack. The official line was that the program was canceled and the remaining cars were dismantled or hidden away. However, a few of these incredibly rare cars managed to survive, hidden by engineers who refused to let the legacy of the Grand Sport fade into obscurity. These engineers knew that the Grand Sport represented something truly special, an extraordinary blend of performance, innovation, and American pride, and they took steps to preserve it. The cars were stored away in private collections, tucked into warehouses, or hidden from the public eye for years. The secrecy surrounding the Grand Sport only fueled the myth and allure of the car, with many believing it had been lost forever. It wasn't until the late 1970s that one of the surviving Grand Sports was uncovered, sparking a renewed interest in the car and its incredible story. The cars that survived were in rough condition, but they were still cherished artifacts of automotive history. The rediscovery of these Grand Sports sent shockwaves through the collector car world, and the legend of the 1963 Chevrolet Corvette Grand Sport was reborn. Today, the surviving Grand Sports are considered priceless pieces of automotive history, coveted by collectors and enthusiasts alike. Their rarity, performance, and the mystery surrounding their creation and destruction make them one of the most significant and intriguing cars of the 1960s. Only 5 of these race cars were originally built, and each one carries with it a piece of the history of American motorsport, showing what could have been had GM not pulled out of racing. The Grand Sport story serves as a reminder of what happens when ambition is stifled by corporate red tape. It's a tale of an American icon that could have been a dominant force in international motorsport. A vehicle that, had it been allowed to race, could have taken on Ferrari and other European giants on the world stage. Instead, it became a car lost to history, hidden away by its own creators, with only a few examples surviving to tell the story of what might have been. Despite this, the Chevrolet Corvette Grand Sport lives on as a symbol of American engineering excellence, a car that represents the unfulfilled potential. The 1956 Chrysler Dart Diablo remains one of the most captivating what-if stories in automotive history. Created during the height of the jet age, when automotive design was heavily influenced by the sleek lines and futuristic aesthetics of airplanes, the Dart Diablo was Chrysler's bold attempt to create a radical, forward-thinking supercar that could define American luxury and performance. Designed by the legendary Virgil Exner, the Dart Diablo was an incredibly ambitious concept that combined cutting-edge technology with audacious design. The Dart Diablo was intended to be Chrysler's flagship, showcasing the company's capabilities in both engineering and design. Virgil Exner, who was known for his forward-thinking approach to automotive design, took inspiration from jet aircraft to create a car unlike anything seen before. The Dart Diablo's design was dominated by sharp, aggressive lines, and it featured prominent tail fins, which were a hallmark of 1950s automotive design. These fins were not just for show, they were meant to evoke the sleekness and power of jet aircraft, symbolizing speed and modernity. The front end of the car was equally dramatic, with a long, sweeping nose and bold vertical grille elements that gave the car an intimidating presence. Under the hood, the Dart Diablo was equipped with an experimental, fuel-injected Hemi V8 engine, a powerhouse of a motor that could have propelled the car to impressive speeds. The fuel injection system was still in its infancy at the time, and the Dart Diablo was one of the first vehicles to feature this cutting-edge technology. Chrysler's engineers were looking to push the boundaries of performance with this car, and the combination of the Hemi V8 and fuel injection promised a level of power and efficiency that was well ahead of its time. The car's interior was as luxurious and futuristic as its exterior. The cockpit was designed with a focus on both comfort and style, featuring luxurious materials and a layout that seemed to come straight from the cockpit of a jet. The dashboard was minimalist yet elegant, with futuristic instrumentation that seemed more at home in a science fiction movie than in an actual automobile. It was a vision of what the future of motoring could look like, combining the best of both worlds, performance and luxury. Despite its stunning design and groundbreaking technology, the Dart Diablo was never meant to make it into production. Chrysler, which was facing financial pressures in the mid-1950s, ultimately decided to scrap the project. Only one prototype of the Dart Diablo was built, and it was quietly forgotten. The reasons for its cancellation are largely speculative, but it's likely that Chrysler's leadership felt the car was too radical and expensive to mass-produce at a time when the company was focused on more practical models. The Dart Diablo's disappearance into obscurity was a quiet one. It wasn't widely publicized or even acknowledged in the years following its cancellation. However, surviving photos and concept sketches have allowed car enthusiasts and historians to rediscover this fascinating piece of automotive history. The Dart Diablo is now regarded as a lost treasure, a bold vision of what could have been a groundbreaking American supercar. Its jet-inspired design, combined with advanced engineering like the fuel-injected Hemi engine, makes it a prototype that seems to have come from another world, one where American automakers were unafraid to experiment with the future of performance and luxury. In the years since its cancellation, the Dart Diablo has gained a cult following, with enthusiasts marveling at its daring design and technological innovations. Some speculate that had it been produced, the Dart Diablo could have redefined the American luxury car market, much in the same way that European sports cars dominated the high-performance landscape. It would have been a car that not only turned heads, but also offered cutting-edge technology that was years ahead of its time. Ultimately, the 1956 Chrysler Dart Diablo was remembered as one of the most radical and ambitious concept cars ever created, a symbol of the jet age and an example of what Chrysler was capable of during its golden years. While the car never made it to the road, its design and engineering left a lasting impression on the automotive world, inspiring future generations of car designers to think big and push the boundaries of what's possible. Today, the Dart Diablo is a rare piece of automotive history, a forgotten prototype that never had the chance to be realized, but still remains a symbol of innovation and boldness in American car culture. The 1974 Ford Mustang Mach-2 is one of the most fascinating what-if stories in the history of Ford and American muscle cars. Long before mid-engine layouts became a common design for high-performance vehicles, Ford took a bold step in the early 1970s to experiment with a mid-engine Mustang, creating the Mach-2. This was Ford's answer to the growing dominance of European sports cars like the Corvette, and even more so, it was an attempt to rival the performance and prestige of cars like the legendary Ford GT40. But despite the incredible promise of the Mach-2, the project was canceled, and all traces of this ambitious prototype vanished into the annals of automotive history. At first glance, the Mach-2 looked like a blend of everything Ford was known for, with a few elements from the iconic Mustang and the track-focused GT40. The body of the Mach-2 had all the hallmarks of a classic 1970s Mustang: aggressive styling, muscular lines, and a distinct, unmistakable American presence. However, beneath its skin was something radically different. The car featured a mid-engine layout, which meant the engine was mounted behind the driver, a design typically associated with high-end European supercars of the time. The positioning of the engine allowed for better weight distribution, making the Mach-2 a potential track weapon capable of handling the tight turns and high-speed straights that cars like the Corvette thrived on. The decision to experiment with a mid-engine layout was nothing short of revolutionary for Ford. The Mach-2 was being designed to compete directly with sports cars like the Chevrolet Corvette, and the mid-engine configuration was seen as essential to achieving the performance Ford sought. With the engine placed closer to the center of the car, Ford engineers hoped to improve the car's handling, balance, and acceleration, creating a true rival to the world-class European machines that dominated the sports car market at the time. Under the hood, the Mach-2 was expected to be powered by a powerful V8 engine, potentially a version of Ford's iconic 351 cubic inch V8, which was already renowned for its torque and horsepower. The powertrain was paired with a rear-wheel drive setup, making the car not only fast, but also an absolute thrill to drive. Much like the Ford GT40, which had earned legendary status in endurance racing. The performance specifications of the Mach-2 were designed to rival anything on the market in the early 1970s, and it seemed like the perfect platform to catapult Ford into the world of elite sports cars. What set the Mach-2 apart, however, was not just its performance or handling, but its sleek, futuristic design. The Mach-2 had a low, wide stance that gave it a predatory look on the road. It was aggressive yet refined, with sharp lines and a smooth aerodynamic body that exuded speed even while standing still. The car was built for looks and performance, boasting a modern, high-tech aesthetic that was far ahead of its time for American muscle cars. Unfortunately, Ford's ambitions for the Mach-2 were never realized. The mid-1970s brought significant changes to the American automotive landscape, and the oil crisis, rising insurance costs, and stricter government regulations all began to shift consumer demands away from high-performance, gas-guzzling machines toward more fuel-efficient vehicles. The muscle car era was beginning to wane, and Ford's focus shifted to other priorities. As a result, the Mach-2 project was quietly shelved, and prototypes were either destroyed or hidden away. Despite the excitement surrounding the car, it simply never made it to production. Since then, the Mach-2 has remained shrouded in mystery. Only a handful of photos and design sketches exist, leaving enthusiasts to imagine what could have been. Over the years, rumors have circulated about surviving prototypes. Some even claim that a few of the Mach-2 prototypes may still exist in private collections, locked away from the public eye. However, despite the persistent rumors, no concrete evidence has ever surfaced to confirm the car's fate. The idea that a mid-engine Mustang might still be sitting in a secret garage somewhere has become a captivating mystery, fueling the imaginations of car enthusiasts. The loss of the Mach-2 is seen as a significant missed opportunity for Ford, Had it been produced, the Mach 2 could have redefined the Mustang's legacy and perhaps made it a serious contender against the likes of the Corvette and other European supercars. The mid-engine design, paired with Ford's legendary performance engineering, could have given birth to a car that would have captured the imagination of the American and international car markets alike. Despite its cancellation, the 1974 Ford Mustang Mach 2 lives on as one of the greatest what-could-have-been cars in automotive history. It represents a time when Ford dared to dream big, when the company was willing to push the boundaries. The 1998 Dodge Copperhead is one of those rare automotive gems that had all the makings of a breakthrough vehicle, only to be silenced by corporate decision-making and marketing strategy. This concept car was initially presented as a smaller, more affordable alternative to Dodge's iconic Viper, offering a similar driving experience, but with a much more accessible price tag. While the Copperhead generated a great deal of excitement at its debut, it quickly faded into obscurity after Chrysler executives made the decision to cancel its production. The Copperhead was initially conceived to provide a gateway to the Viper experience, offering the same raw, aggressive styling and performance that made the Viper a beloved sports car, but without the high price and enormous engine. The concept car was powered by a 3.9-liter V6, which was paired with a lightweight, agile chassis designed to make the Copperhead more nimble and maneuverable than the Viper's massive V10. The V6 engine, while smaller and less powerful than the Viper's V10, still offered an impressive 250 horsepower, giving the Copperhead plenty of muscle for a car of its size. It was designed to be quick, light, and fun to drive, essentially a baby Viper. Stylistically, the Copperhead was a striking car. With its sleek, angular lines, it shared many visual cues with the Viper, including the long, low-profile, wide stance, and aggressive front end. The design was sharp and futuristic, a perfect reflection of the late 90s sports car aesthetic. The body was constructed using lightweight materials, keeping the car nimble and responsive on the road. The Copperhead's design was bold, evoking the Viper's venomous image while presenting a more practical and approachable version of the American muscle car. When the Copperhead made its debut at the 1997 Detroit Auto Show, it was met with immediate acclaim. Enthusiasts and industry experts alike saw the Copperhead as an exciting prospect, essentially a way to bring the excitement and performance of the Viper to a much broader audience. It was a car that had all the looks and the feel of an American supercar, but at a price point that could be more accessible to a wider range of buyers. With a V6 engine, the Copperhead would have been more fuel efficient and less intimidating for everyday drivers, all while maintaining the thrilling driving dynamics that were Dodge's hallmark at the time. However, despite the Copperhead's positive reception, Chrysler executives quickly pulled the plug on the project. The reasoning was simple. The Copperhead was seen as a potential threat to the Viper's market position. Chrysler feared that if a smaller, cheaper version of the Viper became available, it might cannibalize Viper sales, which were already limited due to its high price and niche appeal. The Viper had a distinct identity as an ultra-performance American sports car, and executives worried that introducing a more affordable version would dilute that image. As a result, the decision was made to scrap the Copperhead entirely, and the concept car was quietly pushed aside. Despite the excitement surrounding it, the Copperhead would never make it into production. A few prototypes were built, but they were hidden away and never made available to the public. The few that were shown at auto shows were quickly whisked away to Chrysler's private collection, and no plans were made to bring the car to market. The hype surrounding the Copperhead faded, and it became one of those elusive lost cars that enthusiasts still speak of with longing. The Copperhead's cancellation was a missed opportunity for Dodge. The car could have filled a significant gap in the market, offering a true performance vehicle that was more affordable and accessible than the Viper, while still delivering the excitement of a high-performance sports car. In many ways, it had the potential to be a game-changer, attracting a new generation of buyers who might have been intimidated by the raw power and exclusivity of the Viper, but still wanted a car that offered excitement and thrills. In the years since the Copperhead's cancellation, it has become a symbol of automotive what could have been. Enthusiasts often look back on it as the car that never was, one of the many concept cars that garnered significant buzz, but was ultimately shelved for reasons that seemed more about corporate strategy than consumer demand. Though the Copperhead never made it to production, its legacy lives on as a reminder of what might have been. An affordable, exciting American sports car that could have helped shape the future of the Dodge brand in ways that would have been very different from the Viper's ultra-exclusive performance niche. Today, the Copperhead remains one of those rare what-if vehicles that continue to capture the imagination of car lovers. It's a testament to the boldness of Chrysler's design and engineering teams at the time, as well as the unpredictability. The 1983 Chevrolet Corvette is one of the most mysterious and elusive cars in the history of the iconic American sports car. Unlike most model years in Corvette history, the 1983 Corvette never officially existed in showrooms, creating a strange gap in the Corvette's timeline that still sparks intrigue among car enthusiasts and collectors to this day. The reason for the absence of a 1983 model Corvette lies in a combination of production delays, emissions regulations, and safety concerns, which caused General Motors to cancel the model year entirely. The story begins with the highly anticipated C4 Corvette, which was slated to replace the aging C3 model. The C4 was supposed to be a technological leap forward for the Corvette, featuring an entirely new design, improved performance, and advanced engineering. GM invested significant resources into the development of the C4, which was expected to be a radical departure from previous models, offering more modern features and enhanced performance. However, as GM approached the 1983 production year, a series of challenges delayed the Corvette's release. New emissions regulations and safety standards, which were becoming stricter at the time, forced the automaker to rework key aspects of the car's design to comply. These issues caused delays in production, and as the 1983 model year approached, it became clear that the C4 would not be ready for sale in time. GM decided to skip the 1983 model year entirely, marking the only time in Corvette history that a model year was completely omitted. Though the official 1983 Corvette was never produced, several prototypes were built for testing and promotional purposes. These prototypes were used to fine-tune the car's performance, appearance, and technology, but with the cancellation of the 1983 production run, GM decided to destroy most of these prototypes to avoid any confusion with future models. The reason behind this decision was likely to prevent the 1983 model from becoming a lost or unfinished version of the car that could tarnish the C4's debut. After all, the 1984 Corvette, which would eventually be released, was intended to be the new face of the brand, and GM didn't want the public to associate any unfinished prototypes with the final production version. Despite GM's efforts to erase the 1983 Corvette from existence, one lone prototype managed to survive. This single 1983 Corvette prototype was retained by GM and carefully preserved. It was not until much later, in the early 2000s, that the car was displayed at the National Corvette Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky. This car, now known as the only 1983 Corvette in existence, is a museum piece that showcases the unique moment in history when the Corvette skipped a year. The 1983 prototype is an incredibly important piece of automotive history, not only for Corvette enthusiasts, but for the automotive world in general. The car features many elements that would later define the C4 Corvette, such as the sharp-edged angular styling and the advanced electronics that would set the standard for future generations of the car. However, the prototype also contains some features that would be abandoned or revised in the production models, making it a fascinating example of what could have been. The car itself is not completely identical to the 1984 Corvette. The most notable difference is in the design, particularly the rear end, which was revised before production began. The 1983 prototype also features unique elements like a split rear window, which was later scrapped in favor of a more aerodynamic design. The car's interior also remained unfinished, with prototype elements such as unfinished materials and temporary parts. Despite its unique place in history, the 1983 Corvette prototype is a bit of a mystery, as not much is known about the exact reasons it survived while others were destroyed. Some speculate that GM wanted to preserve the car for historical purposes, while others believe it was kept as a valuable piece of corporate memorabilia. Whatever the reason, the 1983 Corvette prototype is a rare and valuable artifact, symbolizing a time when the future of the Corvette was uncertain, but ultimately led to one of the most iconic generations in Corvette history. Today, the 1983 Corvette prototype is an object of fascination for Corvette fans and collectors. It stands as a reminder of the challenges faced by automakers in meeting regulatory requirements, the unpredictability of production schedules, and the legacy of one of the most famous American sports cars. It's a rare example of a model year that never came to be, and its survival ensures that the story of the 1983 Corvette will live on as one of the most curious chapters in automotive history. The 1973 AMC AMX3 is one of the most intriguing what-could-have-been cars in American automotive history. A bold attempt by AMC American Motors Corporation to build a high-performance, mid-engine supercar that could take on the best of Europe. Designed to compete directly with Ferraris and Lamborghinis of the era, the AMX3 combines sleek, exotic styling with a powerful V8 engine. Yet, despite its promise, the AMX3's potential was never realized, and the car quickly faded into obscurity. The AMX3 was born out of a collaboration between AMS and Italian designers, including the renowned Giorgetto Giugiaro, who had already established a reputation for designing some of the most beautiful and innovative cars of the era. The partnership was aimed at creating a supercar that combined European styling with American muscle, an ambitious project that AMC hoped would rival the performance and cachet of European brands. The AMX3 was based on AMC's existing AMX platform, but it was reworked into a mid-engine layout, a feature that was rare in American cars at the time, but a hallmark of European sports cars like the Ferrari Daytona and Lamborghini Miura. Under the hood, the AMX3 was powered by a 390 cubic inch V8 engine, which was a formidable power plant for the time. The engine was paired with a lightweight fiberglass body, giving the car an impressive power-to-weight ratio. Early testing showed that the AMX3 could outperform some of the most coveted supercars of the era, including the Ferrari Daytona, a feat that gave it credibility as a true contender in the high-performance sports car market. The car's styling was undeniably exotic, with long, sweeping lines, a low, wide stance, and a distinctive, aggressive front end. It was everything a supercar should be: sleek, fast, and built for performance. The interior was no less impressive, featuring a driver-focused cockpit and high-quality materials that matched the car's high-end aspirations. However, despite the car's potential, the AMX3 never made it to production. AMC at the time was a struggling automaker with limited financial resources. While the company had aspirations to break into the luxury and performance car market, it simply lacked the capital to mass-produce a car like the AMX3. The supercar market was notoriously expensive to enter, and AMC could not secure the necessary funding to bring the AMX3 to market in significant numbers. In addition, AMC's focus was primarily on producing affordable, mass-market vehicles, and there were doubts about whether the company could sustain a high-end sports car division alongside its more budget-friendly offerings. In total, only 5 AMX3 prototypes were built before AMC pulled the plug on the project. The prototypes were primarily used for testing and promotional purposes, but once it became clear that AMC could not afford to produce the car on a larger scale, the project was quietly abandoned. The remaining AMX3s were either sold off, dismantled, or hidden away, with only a few examples surviving into the present day. The car's untimely demise was a major disappointment for fans of American performance cars, as the AMX3 had the potential to put AMC on the map as a manufacturer of exotic, high-performance vehicles. It would have competed directly with European supercars in both design and performance, providing a uniquely American alternative to the Ferraris and Lamborghinis of the world. However, the financial realities of the automotive market in the 1970s proved too great a hurdle for AMC to overcome, and the AMX3 was ultimately forgotten by all but the most dedicated car enthusiasts. Today, the AMX3 is regarded as a lost gem in American automotive history. Its brief existence, while filled with promise, was overshadowed by AMC's financial troubles and the global dominance of European and Japanese automakers. Only a handful of AMX3 prototypes survive in private collections, and they are some of the most sought-after rare cars in the world. The AMX3 is a reminder of what could have been. An American-made supercar that could have rivaled the best of Europe had circumstances been different. Despite its failure to reach production, the AMX3's legacy lives on as a symbol of AMC's bold ambitions and the innovative spirit of American automotive design. The car was ahead of its time in many ways, and it remains a fascinating example of what might have been one of the most iconic American sports cars ever made.